I found that a little surprising. None whatsoever is what she was saying. And she might have been exaggerating a little bit. There may have been some restorative justice, but obviously there was so little of it that Reverend Deborah Pope Lance, who, as I said, is very well informed about Unitarian Universalist clergy sexual misconduct issues, basically came back and said none. There hasn't been any real restorative justice to victims of clergy sexual misconduct at all. Anyhow, I think, let's take a look here. Yep, 13 minutes and 23 seconds. So we basically finished a 12-minute segment of the video and started another one. Just had a very good conversation with an African-American gentleman about denial of clergy sexual misconduct on the part of this and other churches. And I think I'll stick around a bit longer. It's certainly been worthwhile. That's one of the nice things about this protest is that basically what it comes down to is for every half-hour segment of protest, there's always something that happens that makes it worthwhile, in the immediate. The beef, it's actually quite interesting. There's a bunch of beefs, but the beefs on this picket sign in particular, the Vatican, as it were, of the Unitarian Universalists. Not. What I'm saying is,
what religion are you?
I used to be a member of this church, but what I'm saying is, this church is equivalent of the Vatican. Their corporate head office, as it were, down in Boston.
Okay.
Hired Stikeman Elliott barristers and solicitors up here to accuse me of the criminal act of blasphemous libel.
You are a priest or a
No,
reverend?
I'm not.
Oh,
I used to be a member of the church.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So
Anyway,
you spoke up, in other words, and they didn't like it, is that it?
that's correct. I spoke about specifically rape committed by certain members of the church, certain ministers.
Oh, so you have that too, eh?
Oh, everyone has it, I think. It's hard to avoid it. But not everyone has to cover it up, which is what they're doing. And so they sent me this nice legal letter.
But they didn't want you as a member anymore, is that
Well, no, that's old history. No, more recently, they accused me of a crime. And specifically blasphemous libel.
Oh.
The Canadian Criminal Code contains a blasphemy law, and they're accusing me of blasphemy for allegedly, and this is an exact quote from the letter, making unfounded and vicious allegations to the effect that ministers of the association, you got the bus coming.
Yeah.
But anyway, I think it's wonderful to be accused of blasphemy in the 21st century. I mean,
I'm sure you couldn't take it out.
we might even try and get rid of that law, I think. We might. Yeah. Okay, thanks for your interest. I appreciate it. So an older couple. So that's like two interesting conversations in a half-hour period. People engaging in a free and responsible search for truth and meaning for what's on my picket sign. The woman said, "What's the beef?" And I proceeded to try to tell her what the beef was. The bus came along, so it prevented me from going into any great detail or even completely finishing, but I think she got the idea, even before I'd completed speaking, she understood, that the church was, trying to hide clergy sexual misconduct. Anyhow, I think it's actually been very worthwhile showing up late today and protesting as people are leaving the Unitarian Church of Montreal rather than entering it as I usually do. I mean, sometimes I do both. Sometimes I will protest, prior to the service for an hour or so. Oh, there's a police car for the look of things. Anyway, no big deal. So as I was saying, I protest, for about an hour before the service starts. then go and have a cup of tea or coffee or whatever, and then come back. And so we'll see if the police want to have a chat with me. 11:08. Oh, I got a nice wave. So they were basically having a little look, and apparently are quite okay with what they see. So that is good. You know, we have had in the past what can be properly described as police intimidation and police harassment, trying to force it into my protest. I would say that, you know, most of the time the police were reasonably accepting of my protest, but unfortunately on a few too many occasions, certain police officers abuse their authority by, you know, threatening me with tickets, you know, ridiculous pretexts, even giving me tickets. You know, I've been ticketed for allegedly dirtying the sidewalk because I wrote some chalk slogans. I had picket signs seized and destroyed by police officers who didn't think that I had the right to have a few freestanding picket signs. I've actually been arrested on criminal charges for allegedly disrupting the order and solemnity of church services. I've been threatened by a detective with another arrest, and so on. You know, there's been a certain amount of intimidation and harassment. But I have to say, in the last year and a half or so, I really have nothing to complain about in terms of police intimidation and harassment. They've actually been quite good. In fact, they did. You know, they were called to the church in January of 2014, so just over a year ago. On January 5th, I believe, I was doing my first protest in front of the church. I was walking right about here, and I was actually going in this direction and saw one of the leading members of the church coming. So I actually stepped over to the right here like this and stopped. So as you can see, there's lots of room for someone to pass. We will just pan the camera here. So as you can see, lots and lots and lots of sidewalk for the person approaching me to be able to pass me. But no, she barged right into me and gave me a heavy body check that actually knocked me right off my feet onto my back. You know, I debated whether or not I should bring assault charges against her for that. You know, I had video evidence. On top of that, the church itself now has a video camera up there, and I thought, you know, the church's camera might have recorded it as well. So I basically debated whether or not I should bring assault charges against the woman. Margot Ellis is her name, former president of the Unitarian Church of Montreal. But you know, I wasn't in a big rush. You know, I wasn't, you know, seriously hurt or anything. I figured I could call it in and just ask the police, you know, what they thought. You know, like, do you think it's worthwhile? You know, let's see what you think. And as I was leaving, about an hour later, the police showed up. I hadn't called them. And the next thing I knew, I was essentially being accused of having assaulted a woman in front of the church. Basically, the police said that a woman had been knocked down in front of the church, and, you know, I was the guy that did it. So I had to explain to the police that, well, no, actually the exact opposite happened. A woman knocked me down. I have video evidence. I can prove it. To the best of my knowledge, no woman was knocked down in front of the church. And I said, well, since you're here, I will file assault charges against Margot Ellis for her assault on me. And on top of that, I will you know, seek public mischief charges for whoever's responsible for calling in this false report to the police. Well, The police were actually very good. They first of all took my word about, not having assaulted anyone. I even said, like, go in and get a report from whoever's making this claim, and it will, I'll file public mischief charges, once they've signed their name on the dotted line. And they didn't actually do that. But, on the whole, they were very good. They took my complaint against Margot Ellis. They told me that it might be a bit slow to be responded to because the detective was on maternity leave and they hadn't found a replacement. So they said, there might be a bit of a delay in addressing this compared to normal, which is fine by me. Well, anyway, a month went by, another month went by, nothing happened. I finally called in March to see what was happening and was told, oh, we haven't got around to, handling your case yet. Give it a couple more weeks, and a couple more weeks through into April. Still didn't hear anything. And I waited a bit longer and still nothing. So it was getting to be mid-May and I hadn't heard anything at all from Station 11 about this. The SPVM annual report meeting was coming up where you can ask questions. So I thought, okay, well, I'll bring this issue up at the SPVM annual report meeting and see, what they think about that. So I brought up that issue, and Annie Sanson, the head of the Security Commission, agreed that I had a legitimate beef there, and put me in touch with the top SPVM officer who was supposed to ensure that this was properly handled. Well, nothing happened, basically. And then in mid-June, more than, or close to 6 months later, I think more than 6 months later, no, more than 5 months later, I'm trying to think now, was it? Anyhow, yeah, I guess it was June. So let's see, January, February, March, April, May. Yeah, so basically, almost 6 months later,